Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Rich Woman Rising podcast. This podcast is designed to help women in business embrace your rich inner woman so that you can uplevel your life and create financial freedom, become completely unstoppable, and live life that you love. So I'm super excited to be here and to share another podcast episode with you. And today I want to be talking about money stories because we all have money stories, and you've probably heard about money stories before. It's not an unfamiliar topic to you. But what I want to talk about is how they develop and why they can be so fucking hard to overcome. Because what I see a lot is women who will come to me and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, Ellie, I have this pattern and it keeps replaying out, and I can see it again and again and again and again, but I don't know why I can't stop." I had a client who would impulsive spend. That could be me. It's not me, but it could be me. I used to impulsively spend myself, and gosh, it was shoes, handbags. So I totally get it. You whip out the credit card and it's like, whoops, add to cart. Okay, I guess that delivery is coming, because it would feel really good and you'd get that little dopamine hit and it would feel really, really nice. And sometimes it can be really difficult to have this awareness of, oh, okay, I've got this pattern, which is what happened to one of my clients. I have this pattern. I know that I keep buying things. I don't want to be buying things. I actually want to invest that money back into my business so that I can grow my business, stop hustling 80 hours a week, be able to make more money and enjoy my life, because I'm getting older. I'm not getting any younger. And I want to be able to actually live my life rather than being stuck in my business and not being able to create the freedom that she wanted. And I find this really interesting because when we think about our money stories and we can see them, we often want to stay in the here and now. And there's this sense of, well, okay, I can see these money stories playing out. I can see it happening in the here and now. And we want to stay in the here and now because it feels safe in some way. However, if we think about how our brain develops, and don't worry, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail today, but if we do think about how our brain develops, it kind of develops in three key phases. We've got the reptilian brain, which is, responsible for our breathing, blinking, all of those automatic things that we don't really think about. And then the next part of our brain to develop is the emotional brain. And this is what I guess we can call the subconscious part of the brain. And these are all the experiences that we have and are happening to us while this part of our brain is developing. This part of our brain continues to develop. And it's only not until we turn 7 that the last part of our brain starts to develop. Notice that I say starts to develop, because we're going to come back to that in a moment. The part of our brain that starts to develop around the age of 7 is our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for things like logical thinking, abstract thought, being able to turn those shapes around in different ways and being able to imagine where they might be able to go. I've never been good at that. So if anyone's good at that, well, I'm not good at doing those kinds of activities. And being able to kind of make rational, wise decisions based on logic and facts. And that part of our brain continues developing all the way up into our mid-20s. What happens though is a lot of our money stories are developing whilst that part of our brain hasn't even come into existence yet. And it's starting to develop, those money stories are starting to develop whilst our subconscious brain is active. And what that means is all of those things that are happening between the ages of 0 to 7, whether it's our parents arguing about money, whether it's us asking to have $10 that we can go down to the shops and buy a magazine, and our parents saying, oh no, we can't afford that. Or no, that's not how you spend money. We start to internalize those beliefs and we start to develop all of these stories around money. And not only do we develop these stories around money, all of those things that we're starting to learn about money bring up feelings in our body. And when we have really strong feelings in our body, that might be shame, guilt, fear, anxiety, worry, resentment, whatever it may be. If those emotions are really strong, then sometimes what happens is they get trapped in our body. The problem is, though, a lot of us want to try and identify our money stories by tapping into that part of the brain, the rational part of the brain that hasn't actually developed yet. We try and solve our money stories or our money relationship with money by targeting the rational part of the brain. And you might be starting to see that that's actually going to be pretty difficult if we have had these experiences prior to the age of 7, where that part of the brain wasn't even in existence yet. So this is why it's really helpful to kind of have that understanding of how our brain works, so that we can understand why it's so important to go back in time to reprogram the subconscious, so that we can make a different meaning out of those early experiences, shift those fears or emotions that are in our subconscious part of our brain, so that we can actually reconnect with that logical part of our brain and make different decisions moving forward. Because all of those scripts that we had developed from our childhood are going to really impact the way that we make decisions in our business here and now. Because the reason that our subconscious does all of this is because it wants to make life easier for us, even though sometimes it does that in a way that doesn't make it easier for us and it doesn't allow us to work towards our goals. Our brain can be helpful in some ways, but also counterintuitive in other ways. But once we understand how our brain works, then we can hack our brain, reprogram our subconscious, and use that to make choices that align with our goals, which is really powerful. And that's exactly what I do in the Millionaire Mindset Academy as well, is really helping people to understand the way their brain works, and then also provide those tools based on neuroscience to help you reprogram your brain so that you can actually do things differently without being held back by those emotions. So when we're younger, before the age of 7, we've got all of these experiences that are leading in to our lives, and our brain's kind of collecting those experiences. It's gathering them and pulling them all together. It's making lots of links in our brain, connecting all these different experiences and memories together, positive memories, negative memories, neutral memories, emotional memories, stressful experiences, fearful experiences, all around all of the different topics and areas in our life. And I'll talk about this in ways like, to kind of give you an example. It's like if you go to a restaurant, you know what to do. Like your brain probably automatically popped you in the restaurant and you're standing at the entrance waiting to be seated. Well, that's where my brain took me anyway. And then you know that when you're standing there waiting to be seated, they'll sit you down at the table and they'll say, would you like a drink? And then they'll give you a menu, and then you'll order, and then they'll bring their food, and then you'll get the check on your table, you'll pay, and then it's time to leave. Your brain creates all of these scripts, and those scripts are helpful in lots of different ways. And the reason that they're helpful is because if you had to mentally think about every single thing that you had to do, your brain would be exhausted and overwhelmed, and you would not be able to get out of bed because your brain would just be like in overdrive all the time. This is why I think kids get a hard rap, because like there's so much that their brains are learning in those crucial developmental years that we underestimate how much is going on in their brains and in their development. So all of that's going on in the background when you're a child, so that as an adult, your brain just pulls on all of those automatic stories that you've got so that you can just do the thing. And we kind of call that autopilot. You just live life on autopilot. And we like to think that we have more control in our life than sometimes we do, because our subconscious really draws on all of those old familiar patterns. It doesn't care about what our goals are. It doesn't care that you want to create a 7-figure business. If you have come from a place of not having a lot of money, then your subconscious is going to keep pulling you towards that pattern until you actively look at that and start to reprogram it and start to feel safer around money. Because our brain likes familiar. And that's why those stories really keep us stuck, because they will look for that familiar no matter what. And you might have even had experiences where in your past you might have dated a shitty type of partner, and you might have said to yourself, next time I'm going to date someone better. And then you might have found yourself dating someone who had a different name and had a different face, but had similar behaviors to your ex. Because our subconscious will seek out the familiar, even if we want something different. Hopefully you're, dating or married to someone who is a much better partner for you now. And if you are, great, because that's showing that we can learn from our subconscious and we can actually change it. However, sometimes those subconscious blocks run really deep, or those stories run really deep. And we need to reprogram those emotions, because emotions really guide a lot of our behaviors in a lot of ways. And that really drives us to the decisions that we're making in our life and in our business. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It is absolutely possible to reprogram your relationship with money. However, we just need to be mindful of where our brain has developed those experiences and memories and stories, so that we're targeting them from the right place in the brain. Because what I see is a lot of women who will try and read the books or do an online course that's based on educating, and they will try and do things that help them understand. And a lot of my clients are like, Ellie, I understand how my family relationships have impacted my relationship with money. I understand that my mum placed way too much responsibility on me as a child, which has now made me not want to be responsible with money as an adult. I get it. And I still can't change it. And that is where the reprogramming comes in. Because what we do, again, in the Millionaire Mindset Academy, is we go back into the emotional part of the brain. We go back into that subconscious part of the brain, which is where those core experiences happened. And that's where we reprogram them. And once we do that, that's where we see a lot of those shifts starting to happen for people, where they are able to tap into that logical part of the brain and make different decisions in their business. And it's really, really cool to see, because it works. And I really love that. So I hope this has helped you understand a little bit more about how we develop those money scripts or those money stories. And you might be thinking about your own money stories as well. And you might be thinking, oh, okay, that's starting to make a little bit of sense in terms of why I'm replaying out those familiar patterns and why it's so hard for me to change. I just want to let you know and reassure you that it's not your fault. Your brain is just really doing what it has been designed to do, which is to keep you safe, to keep you alive. And it doesn't care whether that's aligning with your goals. The good news is you can reprogram that. So I just want you to take that away. You can absolutely change that. And that means that when you change that, you can kind of let go of that younger self and those younger experiences and step into the adult self of you, who really is able to kick those goals in your business and be able to take those steps so that you can create that financial freedom that you are really wanting to create in your business. Thanks so much for joining me on this podcast today. I hope that you found this episode helpful. I cannot wait to share the next episode with you next week. So keep an eye out for that, and I will chat with you soon.